Today's video on the SSL Big Six is sponsored by Racetrack. Not really. Not really. I drink a lot of water. Cheers to you out there. All right, so when I saw this thing come out, I was kind of fascinated because if you think about the history of SSL, you know, their entry-level interfaces have a great reputation. They sound really great for the price. And of course, we all know you'd have to be living under a rock not to know about the wonderful reputation and ultimately historic impact of SSL on our community, being in those massive, beautiful, wonderful, blissful consoles that are around studios around the world and have been used for a very long time. You know, they're in the likes of Neve and API and Trident and so many others. You know, some people are going to go down in the comments, you forgot to mention, okay, I didn't mention them all, but you get the point of it. Just saying they're kind of historic, they're legendary. And I've used the SSL UF8, and I thought they were absolutely wonderful control surfaces. Really, in my opinion, for the average person out there, probably the best control surface that I would recommend the most to most people. Now, in certain situations, I would probably steer away from that, but for the masses, SSL has a great reputation of that as well. And if you didn't know it, SSL bought out Stephen Slade, all of their plugins, and so those are actually all under the SSL umbrella, and they've come out with some pretty stellar plugins of their own and continue to work on those that they purchased from Stephen Slade. And so ultimately, they've done a lot right and very little wrong. Not every company can nail everything, but SSL, in my opinion, has a reputation for nailing a heck of a lot. And so because of that, I was kind of excited to get my hands on this thing. I had high expectations of it. I really thought, man, how in the world are they possibly putting this much into a little recording interface? At the end of the day, that's really what it is, a glorified recording interface, kind of taken to the next level. They packed a lot of punch in here. I think this sells for a little over $3,000. And on the surface, it certainly sounds too good to be true. Well, today I'm going to talk about my experiences with it. And we're going to find out, is my opinion towards the end, by the end of this video, going to be able to remain hopeful and really enthusiastic about this unit? And you're going to have to wait and find out, because today I'm going to give you an honest review of this. I think, unfortunately, based upon my assessment of this, there's been a lot of people have done some making it sound probably different than it really is. I'm really putting that nicely for the record, because I've had this now for about a little over 4 months, I think. And for the record, I asked Sweetwater to send this to me, and I am sending it back. And so I asked him because I really wanted to check this thing out for myself. So thank you, Sweetwater, for giving me the opportunity to be able to do this. And yes, I am. This video is not sponsored by Sweetwater. I've never done a video yet sponsored by Sweetwater. However, I am part of their affiliate program. So if you buy anything from a mic cable for, $20, or you want to go out and buy an, $500,000 console, if they happen to sell it, I think you're probably not watching me if you're looking for that, but you get where I'm coming from. There's links down in the description down below. If you really support this channel, appreciate the hard work and the honesty that I put into it, I would appreciate if you use those links, purchase whatever it is you're going to buy, if you choose to purchase from Sweetwater. That choice is yours. If you happen to be over in Europe, I also have links to Tommen down below too. And they're over there across the pond, based out of Germany, but then service a lot of Europe. So I've got that down below too. So if you're over there, I'd appreciate the support. Just takes a second, boom, and then that's how I make money. I certainly don't make it off views. Okay, so in this board, there like I said, there's a lot packed into it. You've got 4 channels that include a mic preamp or line. Of course, you've got EQ, compression built into all of those, and then you've got several stereo channels coming in, of which you do a shared EQ on the stereo channel. It's got a built-in bus comp on it, and all the routing that you would ever want in something of this form factor. Now, I have to imagine a lot of people out there, when they first get any piece of gear, they're overwhelmed and fascinated, enthusiastic about the bling. And baby, this has some bling to it. But eventually, we all come to the realization, did I really spend my money wisely? Was this really the best I could do for this money? And I mean, really, how much am I really benefiting from it? And that's what we're going to dig into today, because I think that's the most important part. I'm going to tell you by the end of this video, I'm going to ruffle some feathers, but that's the way it goes on this channel. I'm going to give you straight talk, straight deal, and a straight assessment. And some people are not going to like what I have to say. I'm going to get that out of the gate right now. So what do I have to say? This has 4 mic preamps. So let's just get right into it. It's basically like 4 channels with mic preamps. And then you got some stereo channels. How many of you out there track a band with 4 mics? 4 inputs. Do you? No, you don't. You don't. I mean, yes, you're always going to find some people, well, I can do this and I can do that. Well, whatever, buddy. I'm just flat out telling you, the vast majority of people aren't doing that. So most people even recording today are not tracking a band. They're probably using Superior Drummer or something like that. And they're doing a lot of virtual instruments. And so at the most, they're really tracking no more than 2 channels at a time. That fits a lot of people. Not everybody, but fits a lot of people's needs. And so you've only got 4 mic preamps. Let's talk about those mic preamps. How good are they? Man, SSL had some really great mic preamps on their board. They're kind of, got a good reputation there. Well, these 4 mic preamps are about equal to whatever you're going to find on your average interface. They're perfectly fine. They're clean. They had no character, but they're just blah. They're there. There's nothing great about them, and there's nothing that sucks about them. They're just there. Okay? So really, zero benefit for mic preamps, in my opinion. All right. Now, next we get down into the EQ section. Now, let's talk about the EQ for a second. I did a lot. This is where I spent a lot of time. And for the record, when I'm assessing a piece of gear, as I go through certain stages, like I went the whole evaluation where I just did a bunch of analysis on the EQ, comparing it to other analog EQs, comparing it to in-the-box plugins, and doing a lot of that. And I'm not going to bore you with all of that today because you're here to get my opinion, so you can take it for what it's worth. When I was doing that, I take video notes. I'll sit and pull out my phone and I'll kind of do a little selfie so I'd keep track and remember what my opinions were back then. So I'd go through each assessment, going through the EQ, the compression, the routing, the talkback mic. Don't get me started on the talkback mic. I'll come back to that in a second, as well as everything else on it and the type of connectors and everything in the back. And so once I finished my assessment and I was all done and ready to kind of make the video, I went and I started watching multiple videos to see, I was curious to see, how was my opinion stacking up against others? It didn't. It's not going to. It is not going to. It's not. I don't think there's another person that I found that's going to give you the honest review that I'm going to give you today. Now, you could argue whether I'm right or wrong. That's your prerogative. I found the EQ to sound pretty good. It sounded pretty good, to be honest with you, but it's limited. It's very, very, very limited. It doesn't have that traditional, really significant analog flavor to it like you'd get out of this one here. Whoop, I dropped my screwdriver or something down there. I did a review on this not too long ago, and if you happen to be, we're going to hear all that crackle, crackle, crackle and everything back there. But this is the SSL 500 series. Let me see if I can get that. There we go. That the SSL 500 series. Now this is freaking great. I love this EQ. I absolutely love it. It was absolutely fantastic. You should go check out that review if you're interested. But that is an EQ with some character. Sounds absolutely fantastic for the price. This EQ on here, I'd use a plugin 10 times out of 10 before I'd use that EQ. I don't find it really being that beneficial, to be honest with you. Let's go into the compressor. The compressor is, guess what? Limited. Now, I do understand the limitations. They're packing a lot into $3,000. So you got to keep that in mind. You got to put all of this in perspective, okay? Just because I may not find something great about it doesn't mean there's a lot to this, right? But would you be served better? Let's face it, if you're just recording 2 channels at a time, and most of you probably just one, you'd be better off going out and buying a piece of Warm Audio gear or Stam Audio. Huge fan. If Warm Audio could have the construction quality of Stam, they would be on a whole new level. I'm not saying warm audios is bad, but it's just okay. It's not fantastic, where STAM audio is off the charts. So is Audioscape. They do a really good job too. And capping over into the API world, I think you'd be better suited to go out and buy an EQ like that or a compressor like that and really get yourself a stereo setup to where you can do that during tracking. I found the compressor. Does it compress? Yep, it does. It compresses. Would it be the compressor I would choose first? No, it would not. It would not. It's not terrible, but it's not great. I'd use some plug-in compressors over this one. That's just the reality to it. Now, I will say, this thing is built solid. Everything feels solid. I mean, the construction is exactly what you would expect. The faders feel good. I wish they weren't so loose a little bit. I wish they were a little bit firmer to the touch. But regardless of that, you've got that. So now let's talk about the faders on this. Had they put some of the UF8 technology into this and really kind of made this a control surface as well, I think that would be something that would be very beneficial here, where you could get the best of it. Unfortunately, you don't get that. You don't get that at all. Let's talk about the stereo channels. How many of you out there are honestly, I'm talking about percentage. If we're looking at a pie chart, right? Just picture your mama's baked apple pie. Delicious, delicious, delicious. Of course, you got to have some ice cream, but set that off to the side. Let's say cherry pie, okay? You got a cherry pie, right? I start thinking of Warrant. Okay, you got a blue blackberry pie. I like blackberry. You got a blackberry pie, right? And you can cut that thing into 4 big slices, and you can chow down and eat way more pie than you should. Or you can cut this little sliver, like my wife always said, just cut me a little piece, just cut me a little piece, when she really wants a big piece. But she says, cut me just a little piece, and take that out, right? Where are you as far as being able to send stereo signals through this outside of those of you out there that are doing hardware sense? That's probably one of the few instances in which you're going to do that. And so now I'm talking about recording, right? I'm going to get back into the summing aspect of this, or the so-called summing aspect of this. But you've got that, okay? And so I just don't think for tracking, that doesn't really do much for the average person. Is there a group of people? Sure. But it's that little sliver, that little sliver of blueberry pie. And if I'm going to eat blueberry pie or blackberry pie, I like blackberry. It's going to be good, and that piece going to be big, big, big. So anyway, I'm talking about law of averages here, right? So let's talk about the routing and flexibility. Because this thing's got 435,000 jacks on the back of it that you can connect various things to. I say that to grossly emphasize it, but there's a lot, okay? And I'm going to talk about that here in a sec, okay? So when you talk about routing, this thing does a great job. I will give it its props. You have a ton of flexibility. If you use your noggin up here, you can get very, very, very creative on your routing, especially if you're incorporating other pieces of analog gear to this. So you can open this thing up a whole lot by doing that. That, I would say, they did a very, very, very good job, considering its price point, to give you all that routing flexibility. And I think that was fantastic. Let's talk about this talkback mic right here. Again, why the crap do you need a talkback mic if you're only recording 4 things at a time? I mean, there's other ways of doing that. But hey, they threw it in there, but I see no pros, no benefits to it. And I didn't find that it didn't sound very good either. But that's just my 2 cents. Now, let's go on to talk about the connectivity and everything on the back. Where are the D-sub connections? Why in the world am I having to plug so many balanced 1/4-inch cables on the back of this thing? It's an absolute cable management disaster. Why not just do DB25 and make it simple for all of us? If I was using this extensively, I'd wire it into a DB25 patch cable along with patch bay along with other analog gear to be able to patch that in. That would be ideal. If not, you could just take DB25 out of it, and you can break that into XLR male or XLR female, or you can break it out into 1/4-inch balance. Whatever you want to do, you can do that, and you keep the clutter to a minimum. I think all of these cables on the back, again, I don't know why. You're just looking for more things to potentially go wrong later on if you're plugging and unplugging. Now, granted, once you kind of get it connected, they're probably set and forget for most people, and I think that's fair. But the connectivity to it, I felt would have been better served if they'd done DB25. Now, this thing is your recording interface too, if you didn't know it. It connects via USB, so you don't need a separate recording interface for this. And so you connect this right up to your computer and you're set, you're ready to go, you're ready to record through it. You can send tracks out of your digital audio workstation back to it. That's where we'll talk about the summing in a second. And ultimately, that's a decent way of doing it. Okay, so they should have left that out. They should have just connected this thing via ADAT to a separate interface. That would have been better. Now let's talk about ADAT. There's no ADAT, there's no Maddie, there's no Dante, none of that on the back of this thing, which is a massive, massive, massive fail. Why in the world would I want to be able to do that? I want to be able to expand later on. If you want to be able to take advantage of some of these other inputs, of which you can, right? But you're going to need external mic preamps. That's the way you're going to be able to record a whole band here. But you can take those same mic preamps and go right through a regular recording interface and do it. And so ultimately, there's no ADAT expansion on this, which is probably the most common. I would argue the time of ADAT is kind of come and gone, but to some degree, it hasn't come and gone. It should be better. Things like Maddie and Dante and AVB and things like that open things up so much more. I'd really love to see that be incorporated into more and more pieces of gear. Understanding that's overkill for a lot of people, and I can respect and appreciate that. So there's no ADAT expansion on the back. So there's no expansion here. No expansion, which means ultimately you're going to have to pair this with another recording interface. Well, why in the world do I have the freaking, why do I even have the digital analog and analog to digital conversion on this? It just wasn't well thought out, in my opinion. It just was not well thought out. Now, I keep seeing a lot of people call this a summing box. Kids, this ain't no summing box, okay? Can you do a quasi attempt of maybe summing-ish? Yeah. But if you are sending things back out, you're sending things back out to get the analog flavor, right? The analog flavor. Well, how are you going to get the analog flavor if ultimately the EQ is just kind of okay? It's just kind of okay. What are you sending it out to? What are you sending out to? I don't know. And lastly, a lot of people like to say, it's got the bus compression built into it. It's got that G-comp in it. It ain't the regular G-comp, kids. It's just not. I mean, it does a good job considering what it does. It does a good job. I would use SSL's plug-in version over this before I'd use this, but that's my 2 cents. Now I've got a Stam Audio G-comp back there, their take on that. This sounds absolutely fantastic. That blew this thing out of the water, and I think that's like $600, 600-ish or something like that. And so it blew it out of the water. And so I think my overall opinion, I'm sure you figured out right now that I'm not exactly thrilled with this. I think SSL, you have reached too far. You've tried to do too much. I applaud you for trying. I really do. You're a great company. I believe in you. But this is an attempt to satisfy a lot of needs in a very, very, very mediocre way. My final conclusion on this, do I recommend this unit? It's not only a no, it's a hell no. I think you would be flushing your money down the drain buying this unit because for that same $3,000, you can do better. Stuff that will do much more for you. You may not get as much, but you're going to do a lot better and go a lot farther that way. I feel like it would be better to save even more money to invest in quality individual pieces of analog I/O, or not I/O, but analog gear, and you'd be much better suited. SSL, this is probably the most damning video I've ever done. And I'm sorry about that, SSL, but I've got to be honest with my viewers. And I'm going to tell you, SSL, as far as I'm concerned, you need to pull this thing off the shelf at every music store, quit making it, go back to the drawing board, and do better. That's ultimately what I'm going to tell you. Does it suck? No, it does not suck. It does not suck. Is it great? It is not great. Is it worth $3,000 when you could spend that $3,000 in other ways? No. You could get much more mileage out of investing that money better. And that's just my 2 cents. For those of you that own it, I'm sorry, I probably ruffled a few feathers. I told you in the beginning I might. Again, I'm not saying this is a terrible piece. A lot of folks that are buying something like this, it's probably the very beginning stages of their first foray into the analog world, and they simply have probably not likely had exposure to other great analog pieces of gear. Unless to be able to go out and truly listen to something and really check it out for yourself in a music store before you buy it, you pretty much got to live near LA or Nashville or New York, Chicago, some of those places where you can find a Vintage King near you or some other music dealer where you can go and really kind of explore and test some gear out on your own. You're pretty much rolling the dice like you're in Vegas a little bit and testing it out that way. And yes, you can just turn around and send it back. It's no big deal. That can be a big pain in the butt and a hit on your credit card for a while until you finally get that credit back. But regardless of that, there are other ways to kind of go about this. I'm sorry, SSL. I can't give this, let's see, let me give it a star review. Now again, my star review is based upon the price. It's based upon the price. Based on $3,000, or a little bit more than that, based on $3,000, I would give this a 2 out of 5. A 2 out of 5. Now I'm going to go a step further. If this thing were $1,500, I'd give it a 3 out of 5. I just don't see any redeeming value of anything other than mediocrity in this unit. And that's my 2 cents. Until next time, have a great day. Bye-bye.